Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Game Changer. I'm very excited today to have Dr. Sandi Rogers with us. And full disclosure, I've known this woman my entire life, literally, because she's my aunt. So it's cheating a little bit. But also probably one of the most interesting people you're going to meet, hands down. So Sandi is a qualified medical herbalist, naturopath, reflexologist, lecturer, massage therapist, and the founder and CEO of the Natural College of Traditional Medicine. She's been on about every television show known to man. She's definitely done every radio interview and is a specialist in naturopathy, reflexology, and just all around a good egg, which is why we had to speak to her. So, Auntie Sandi, thank you. It's going to be very hard calling you Sandi today, which is going to be really challenging because you're my aunt.
You're most welcome. Lovely to speak to you.
In such a professional context. We've just spent 20 minutes offline discussing COVID-19, which is causing all sorts of havoc here in Australia and the rest of the world. And so tell us about natural medicine.
Tell you about natural medicine?
Yeah, tell us about natural medicine.
Well, it's interesting. Natural medicine is always generally overlooked by people until a crisis happens. Take COVID-19. Natural medicine comes into play. We talk about vitamin C, we talk about eucalyptus, we talk about healthy diet, healthy attitude. The consumer in the Australian marketplace, we find we're in the third generation of natural medicine followers. So literally since the Second World War, say, we started to get a move into pharmaceutical drugs, and then from there we moved away from those, and generally people started interfacing the two, pharmaceutical drugs, herbs, etc. So natural medicine has had a profound influence on the world. Mainly over the last 400 years, we've been able to scientifically validate why herbal medicine, as an example, will always be there and continue to be used as a viable form of treatment for all illnesses that beset mankind. So natural medicine is probably one of the most fantastic fields to be involved with. Huge struggle, of course, in the late 70s, early 80s, when the AMA tried to close us down and we were called quacks by the government, and the government and the AMA tried to close us down, but the consumer market didn't let us go. And we were able to step up, educate better. We needed to do that because we had a little bit of a mindset about it's natural, it won't hurt me, and our training was very limited. Whereas in that era, we knew that we had to do that better. So we had to educate better, we had to become educators. We needed to get our practitioners to think more professionally rather than airhead, I used to call them airhead mindset. You've got to be able to scientifically rationalise the treatment that you're going to do. And since the mid to the late 80s, we've been able to do that and step up to the mark. And as you can see now, Chemist Warehouse, you look at all the chemist warehouses around the country, pharmacy across the globe are all stocking natural medicine because it works and the consumer wants it. So that's a little bit of a caption about natural medicine.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I think a lot of people just go, I take vitamin C when I'm a bit sick, and we pop the pill, which is kind of the reactionary stuff when you're talking about Chemist Warehouse. We've seen forever that you go in, take a tablet. You have a little bit of a different approach, I guess, to natural medicine, as in like not talking about not using those things. I certainly, under your guidance, have taken cranberry juice and taken dehydrated cranberry to assist me with some of the health issues that I've previously had. But you have a different way of looking at things, as in using food as medicine. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, well, one thing is that we need to look at folk medicine, and I'm trying to get folk medicine revival happening, because for the last 400 years, we know that food as medicine actually works and works very well. There's a lot of scientific information about that. So when I deal with a client, I don't deal with their condition. When I sit down with a patient or a client, whichever we want to call them, I want to know about everything. I want to know about every aspect of their body. I have 2 pages of information I ask. And people say, oh, I'm here because I've got diabetes type 2 as an example. So you might have type 2 diabetes, but I want to know what else is going on with your body, because disease and illness doesn't happen just to one little part of the body. Everything's affected. And the way that we're going to get over it is to make sure that your body is fed correctly. And that doesn't mean to say that you've got to go on some weird vegetarian or vegan diet. You don't have to, you know, stop eating meat or fish or chicken or whatever. You haven't got to have a weird diet where you've got to eat at certain times of the day or facing west or east and all of the stupidity that goes with it. The fundamental principles are there's only one disease known to man, and that is called congestion. There is only one treatment to think about, and that is decongest the body, the part of the body that's congested. And therefore, by doing that, you will then free up the rest of the body. And 9 times out of 10, food is the first port of call to think about. Example would be somebody who has a really bad waves of nausea, and they might be taking lots of pills and potions that they would get from the doctor or the pharmacy or whatever. My thought would be, first of all, if you've got wave-like sort of nausea, there's something going on with the bowel, so let's get that working. Let's do some grated carrot and apple, and then have a look at you in 2 weeks and see what happens. You could be dehydrated and not hydrating correctly. So the principles of folk medicine I use first, and then we'll rely on the hugely scientific world of herbal medicine to actually start treatment only if and when necessary. Because so many times, it'd be thousands of times the number of times someone's come in, I've given them either juice, a smoothie or a grated food formula, and it's fixed their problem, and they've spent thousands of dollars on pills and they haven't worked. And then a slight tweak of the diet with maybe some home remedies, case of diarrheic episodes, have some corn flour, stabilise the bowel, lubricate it with some rolled oats, job's done. So that's what my whole career is based on, really. And I've never advertised my clinics. So it's just always been word of mouth, and my clinic is booked out for a year in advance. So something must be working okay.
I think better than okay. You're sort of the expert in this industry for a reason. And certainly, you know, I have been gone into your clinic and had to do the 2 pages of notes. And, you know, it was questions like, show me your nail, show me your irises. I'm like, I'm here because I have issues with my kidneys. And you're like, shut up, answer the questions. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
So, and it really is this, what I've, you know, and I having grown up around you, one of the things is like, it was never that Western medicine was demonized and don't use that and absolutely don't use the antibiotics. But it's like, if you're going to use that, you need to do these 4 other things to counteract everything else that's going on. And it's such, you know, the complementary nature of what you do, because I know that, and you sort of talked about these quack ideas and like, you have to be facing west and you have to drink, you know, exactly 40 ml of something. This stuff has really been put a negative, I think, spin on folk medicine, and also just food as medicine, and just we've had, certainly I think we've got people who've gone too far into you have to eat vegan and the paleo and the keto and all of that stuff, whereas it's a holistic approach, which is what I loved about it, because you really, and the big reason I wanted to speak to you was that you're, you know, and why really about how you've really changed not only just my life but the thousands of other people that you have worked with, is that you said to me very recently, when we caught up over Christmas, that you're sort of coming into sort of the retirement years, and that now you're like, I want to pass this information over to the next generation that are coming through. But more importantly, that this was, you know, you really for a big part of this, and I'm very proud, I guess, to say this, that you really brought natural medicine to really another level here in Australia, if not worldwide, definitely.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean,
I know,
I always wanted to contribute and put back into the field, because when I entered it, which was in the late 70s, when I first entered into it, it was like quackery. No one took any notice of anybody, but I knew how fantastic it was. And the reason I knew how fantastic it was because my grandmother actually was around us children, and she used to grow herbs, and it'd be nothing for her to go out into this huge garden, pick something. We'd be sick or whatever. She'd come in with this thing that we'd have to drink, tasted terrible normally. But we knew that it would be right, it would be fixed, and that would be it. And so I always knew that herbal medicine particularly was fantastic and was very effective. And so I never intentionally ever wanted to be a herbalist. In fact, I totally forgot about all of that for many, many years, and it only came back into play when a friend of mine actually got cancer, and I'd retired from the prison service where I was working after 12 years doing a life sentence, and then she got sick, and I thought, I'll have a look and see what natural medicine or herbs we could use. And there was an ad for to learn how to be a naturopath. Now, I didn't know what a naturopath was. I had to look up in a dictionary to find out what it was. And I thought, I'll do that. So once I got into it, I was very passionate about it. And I always wanted to put back, and I always wanted to, I had my grandmother's little notebooks. I found those. Well, my parents had them, and I started going through them. And then there was a whole range of other things that needed to be done. We needed to get credibility from government. We needed the media to listen to us and not treat us as a joke, or every time something would go wrong, they would slam us. It was our fault if someone got sick. And so I used to become infuriated with it. I knew nothing about how to do media. I knew nothing about how to appear on TV. I knew nothing about how to run organisations or anything. But eventually I ended up being national president of the Naturopathic Association, Australian Traditional Medicine Society, only because no one else wanted the job. And so I just landed in it because I thought, well, we can't let this stop. And from there, we went from around 3,500 members to over 11,500 in 5 years. And it became a huge organisation, but I had to become political. I had to become a media analyst, and I had to learn a whole range of things, but all not for me. It was never, ever about me. It was about the credibility of the profession. And we aren't actually a profession, we're an occupation, if we look at it clinically. I wanted everyone who was training to be a naturopath, a herbalist, a massage practitioner, to be proud of who they were because of the contribution that they made to the community in which they lived. And so I worked very hard, relentlessly, to get that credibility. So yes, my name is well known, but I think my name is well known just because, not that I was clever or smart or anything, I was just a hard worker, and I wasn't going to let anyone really run us down and run any of my colleagues or fellow practitioners down. And because I was in the role of president, then I could make a difference on their behalf. And basically, that's what happened, really. And yes, I was fortunate in travelling the world and being invited to go to wonderful places and do public speaking, which I said I'd never do. Someone said to me one day about doing public speaking. I said, I'll never stand up in front of people and talk. There's no way.
It's funny now because I just know how many speaking engagements you've done. You sent me over your media kit before. We had about a chat about this. It's a really interesting thing because you don't see yourself, I know a little bit about your journey, and I know we're about to go into this shortly, but a little bit about your journey of like working in prisons and then suddenly finding yourself kind of on this really interesting journey that you don't really necessarily know the destination of, which I kind of also love because it's just the true story of entrepreneurship, right? You go to one thing, you say yes to that, then you say yes to another thing, and your life is way more interesting when this occurs. So, all right. So we've kind of hinted to it. So we're going to jump into our 5 things. So one of the things I asked all my guests to come on is teach kind of the big life lessons that you've got that you want to impart to other people. So first one, what have you got for us?
Well, the first one I wanted to say was about school, because so many people in schools, young people that I see, and I see children. In fact, I've got one little client, he's 8. His name is Jack. and he's a terror.
Of course he is. He's 8. Got it. Yep.
Yeah, but he's also a Jack, and I think Jacks have a bit of a terror sort of thing about them. But, you know, in school, it conditions you to be so many different things. You believe what people tell you, that you're stupid, that you're dumb, that you're whatever. You might be clever, or you might be smart, or you might be pretty, or you're ugly. All these things happen in a school scenario. And in the school scenario that I was in, I was one of the terrors, because I went to a Catholic school, a private school, a Catholic school, and I hated it because they're always telling me what to do.
Yeah.
And as a child, I had a photographic memory. I no longer have it, but that's the worst thing, because I'd get it. They'd tell me something once, I'd get it, and then the teacher would be standing there telling student 10 times the same thing. So I used to get bored and get into trouble. The reason I say school is that I learned that it's through the school of hard knocks that you learn how to play the game. And because the balance with my parents, they allowed us to do and be whatever we wanted to be. And so we're in a very strict educational setting, but quite a free mindset with parents. So a major influence for me was that at 14, when I decided I wanted to leave home, my father said, because I thought I knew it all, I said to my father, I'm leaving, I've had enough of everyone telling me what to do. He said, okay, love, how much have you got? I said, I've got $2. Well, he said, that should probably get you down to Ruthven Street, which is about half a kilometre. I thought, I'm going to show him. So I went in, I packed a bag, and I got into my bags and everything, and I went out onto the main street, and I hitchhiked, and I went to Sydney. And through the education that I had, I knew how to play the game. You had to play the game. If you wanted to get where you wanted to go, you had to be street smart. So I learnt my street smarts at school. And I thank the difficult years that I had at school for what I've now later become in my life, because my parents said you can be and do whatever you want to be and anything you want to do. My father said the only thing that you ever have to make sure of is that every night you go to bed, you say to yourself, who have I helped today? And if you haven't helped one person at least, then you've got to help 2 tomorrow. That's the end. There ends life lesson, he said. So it was a bit of a shock to them when I didn't come back, and I was registered as a missing person.
Yes, you were. You really, someone needs to make a movie about your life, because the stories as I got older that would come out around the table, because I was a kid, like, I'm not that interested, but so, 16, 17, you wanting to hang out with your family. And I started to hear these stories, and my mum would just drop these stories, and I was like, what the hell happened? Like, and you just hear these, these infamous stories about you and about, and then later in life, you told me over Christmas this year, you were just telling me about and then you end up hitchhiking and you get to a hotel and you're like, I could be a maid. And you go in and you lie. Have you been a maid before? Absolutely. And the guy's like, no, you haven't. You're like, yeah,
well, he asked me if the first job that I got out of the truck, and it was at the corner of, there was a hotel, and it was at Bondi Beach, and there was a big sign, housemaids wanted. And I said to this guy who was walking past, excuse me, do you know they're wanting housemaids? He said, oh, yeah. He said, they're employing. I said, well, what is that? He said, oh, they make beds, mop floors and that sort of stuff, and take breakfast up to the rooms. Oh, I can do that. So I go in and they said, well, do you know what a housemaid is? I said, of course I know what a housemaid is. You make beds, you sweep floors. Exactly what the guy out the front told me. And so they said, well, it sounds like you know what you're talking about. And you had accommodation and meals. So that was my first job. And I stayed there for 6 months and saved all my money, and then got a job as a Jillaroo in Queensland, and that was accommodation again, going out on horseback, driving cattle. I put my age up to 18, and that was fantastic. So look, I just travelled through life really having great fun and did some amazing things. So so that was my first one is school, and the influence that school has. You learn that you've got to have discipline, but you've got to be able to learn that what you're told about yourself is not necessarily true. When they say you know, your sister will always be made something of herself because she's so special, she's such a good girl. You're going to have terrible trouble in your entire life. And I was told that by the nuns. You will never, ever be anything. So when I was just before my 14th birthday, I nearly got expelled because I said, well, I want to thank her for what she said to me because I didn't take any notice of what she said. I thought that she talked shit, so therefore I'm probably going to have a pretty good life. My father and mother had to go to the school. I got the cuts with the bamboo cane for being that naughty. And then I was disciplined. My parents had to come. It was funny, though, because as we were driving home, Dad said, you know, you got to learn who you sort of talk to like that, and left it at that. It was about 3 months later that I ran away from home. And I did go back, though. I was 19 before I went back home.
Were you really 19 or were you pretend 19?
No, I was a real 19.
Okay.
Yeah, real 19 that I went back home. And my parents knew then that I did contact my sister about 2 years after I'd left. I was in Western Australia by that stage, and then I did keep in touch with them. And then from the time I was 19, I did keep in touch with the family. So that was the first major event, which I believe has helped me in clinical practice understand people like young Jack. People bring children who have got lots of issues, often a lot of anger issues. When I was in Melbourne, as you know, I would be doing a lot of work for the criminal justice system with young offenders. And the reason I could counsel and work with them is because I don't think that probably apart from murder, you know, there isn't anything that they have done that I hadn't done. So I understood these kids. And it was that understanding and being able to see through the crap that they've been told and their rejections and all of that. And that has stood me in good stead. And even today, I still, although I take on very, very few new clients, young people who are referred to me, I always take them on. And, you know, young Jack, who was in his 4th school where he'd been expelled, he's now a leading principal. He's a prefect at one of his schools now, and has really settled down. And all that child needed was someone to listen to him. And it turns out that the reason he behaved so badly was he is so intelligent. He was treated as stupid, but he's so intelligent. He got it first, and he didn't have to be told something time and time again. So now he's in special schools where his intellect has been catered to. There's so many people out there like that.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I used to get in trouble all the time. So for people who are fairly new to my content, I went to a primary school that had 12 children. And so literally the chalkboard, like 12 for the whole school, not just my year level, the whole school. Yeah. So one of the chalkboards on the left-hand side was prep to 2, and then grade 3 to grade 6 was on the other side. And eventually, thankfully, one teacher picked this up very quickly, that I was very similar to you. I could listen to what they'd said, and I was like, 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4. Like, I could do that very easily and understood. And I was like, yeah, I get it. Yep. All good. Yep. And then, like, my eyes would just be like, what's going on over there? And I would start doing the other work. And the teacher, thankfully, Mr. Holman, bless his cotton socks, he said to me, I don't mind if you do that work. I want you to do it, but you got to do your work first so I know you get it. And he's like, if you know this, just nod, tell me you know it, and then go and do the other work. But yeah, like, it's fine, because I would have hands down been one of those students, because when I went to my school eventually, from lack of numbers, the school closed, and I ended up going to a bigger primary school, that's where I really struggled, because I would get in trouble for talking, and I'd get in trouble for not paying attention. I'm like, but I could teach you this comfortably. Like, I've got this. Yeah. And that's where the trouble really started for me, and then became, you know, well, and mum and dad thankfully could recognize and started putting extra books into my bag. Like, they would buy me Goosebump books, and they're like, when you're done your work, read this. Okay. And then I was getting through 2 or 3 days a week, and they're like, we've got to find more shit for our kid to do. This is a problem. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so life-changing though, isn't it? And because you're exposed to that, you can then, I think, pick children who you can pick what's going on with them. and get an empathy with them, because you cut through all the stuff and, you know, you can really get into their level with them. And yes, it's lovely. You know, some of the young people that I worked with in Melbourne, like 35 years ago, one is now a leading barrister, and he was, at 7 years of age, was told that he will never make anything. He was expelled from 3 schools. And it was all home stuff. There was a lot of home aggression and violence and all of that. So I saw him weekly, and it's not me who did it. It was that I could see what was going on with him and how educators could deal with him differently. And then he just took off. And, you know, I've had consultations with his young son about 5 months ago, who happens to be very much like his father at that age. So he said, "Sandy, would you have a talk to him?" I said, "Yep, no worries." So that's where I think school's a big influence.
Okay, what's our number 2?
Well, the second one is my life relationship that I'm now in, that when I, you know, all the drug, sex and rock and roll that I went through from 14 through till about 30, really.
And to be fair, in all seriousness here, if anyone wants to option this movie, because this shit needs to be made, because this story is epic and we're only like skimming the surface of the things that I found out, and probably there's more to it, please get in touch with the show, because you need to hear this full story. Please continue.
Well, yeah, up until 30, and your mother was included, because she was part of, you know, some of this wild living.
Yes, she was.
And, you know, most wonderful friend, my very best friend is your mother.
I'm sorry about that, but you got me out of the deal, so that's good.
No, well, I did get you out of it too. No, I'm very happy about having your mother and father as my very best and closest friends. It wasn't, I met my life and my now life partner in jail. We were working together in jail.
We were working in jail. Let's be very clear.
We were working in jail.
My mother also worked there. Yeah.
Yes, so I met her there, and I asked her to go out, and she said, "You've got to be joking. With your reputation, there is no way known." And I went, "Well, I don't think that's very nice." She said, "Well, you know, gambling, drinking, womanising," and of course in those days, being gay wasn't as acceptable as what it is today. Anyway, so cut a long story short, I thought, oh, well, I'll probably have to think about this. We became really good friends first, and we were very great mates. We'd, you know, go out and socialise and do stuff like that. Anyway, we eventually did get together about a year later. Cost a lot of money in dinners and shows and all this sort of stuff. Anyway,
worth it though. She's also great.
Absolutely worth it. But what replaced all the life stuff that you do at that age, and the parties, you're really not settled down. Life is just a big party, and it was I worked very hard. I was in the prison service and had a very responsible job and all of that, but it was all just about having fun. But when you find somebody that there is just something you know, I used to hear people say about soulmates or life partners. I always thought it was a bit of a wank. I used to say to them, you're talking shit, really. I mean, how would anyone ever know that? Well, until it happened to me, and then I just knew. It was like I just knew that. There was no question. There was no thinking, is it or isn't it? It was just a fact. And basically, we've been together. It's our 40th anniversary next year, and that was a huge change for me because of stability, number one. She's always said to me, I'll support you in anything that you ever want to do, and I'll always help you achieve anything that you ever want to do.
She followed through with every part of that. There's been some, every you're absolutely, the one thing I would say about you guys, you are each other's cheerleaders.
Yeah, and we started when we left the prison, which was retired from the prison service, and then I became a naturopath, because that basically, the transition was, well, when you retire from the prison service, well, what are you going to do? I was too young, really, to not be doing anything. And that's when a friend of ours actually got very sick with cancer, and she got into natural medicine, and she asked me one day, just casually, really, it was over Easter. We were spending 4 days together, the four of us, her and her husband and us two. And she said, do you know anything about natural medicine? I said, oh, the only thing about natural medicine really is about my grandmother, and I have some of her notebooks. And mainly it was about wound healing and all that sort of thing. And she said, oh, she'd been diagnosed the week before with breast cancer but hadn't told us. And she was telling us on that Easter. She was going to have a radical mastectomy, and that they would hope that they would get it all. So I said, oh, well, I'll start having a bit of a look. And of course, in those days, there wasn't anything like the internet. You really had to go to the library and find it. So I started doing that, and I became really, it was just like as if when I got into herbal medicine books, and some of the really old ones that were all that yellowy colour, that were like, you know, late 1800s, early 1900s, it was like as if I was just home, and I loved it. I would stay there all day and into the night. And Ronnie'd say to me, where are you going today? You're going to the library again? Again? She'd say, oh, yes. She'd make me my lunch, and I'd go to the library in Melbourne. I loved going into there. Then I go to some of the university libraries and found a whole lot of information on support care for cancer in herbal medicine. That's when I decided that I would train as a naturopath. And that's when I came across the ad about a naturopath. Never knew what it was. But in the course, when I looked it up, it had, you would learn how to grow medicinal herbs, and a lot was about herbal medicine and was about folk medicine, which just resonated with me. It sounded really good. So I did the training, passed that, and then continued studying for like 9 years, really, because I went from that, then did specialised herbal training, then I did massage training. So I just kept doing courses. In the interim period, though, we started a clinic. And that was only because my friend with the cancer, she became my first patient, because I needed to have patients for my clinical hours.
Of course.
And then she got all of her friends, and then a friend owned a tennis court, and then all of them were injured, so I was doing massage for them. So I was going to the golf, to the tennis courts 2 days a week, at my friends 2 days a week. And within 18 months, I had a full clinic, and it's never ever been different. So from that, we then started a college, because there was very few or limited quality education. And I said, I want to start a school. Ronnie said, you don't know anything about teaching. I said, no, I'll have to go and learn how to do that. So I enrolled in the university in a teaching course, but started running courses at home on a Sunday with just little introductions, so people would know what herb to use here, what food for that. And we did a lot of testings and everything. And then, of course, the college started, and then I became the president of the Australian Traditional Medicine Society. And all that time was working in clinic. And there's been a lot of transitions, because I think the fourth one was becoming the president, realising that you're in a position of leadership, but you don't know how to do it. You don't know about you don't know about the Corporations Act. You don't know, this is a company limited by guarantee. You've got no idea about legalities, paperwork, documentation, strategic planning. Nothing was like that. Nothing existed in the world of natural medicine education. It was like you had a 60-hour course as a naturopath. That was it. Now it's a 4-year advanced diploma or degree. Massage was a 12-week course, and people got great results with that limited education still. So we then being in the position of taking over from the president who had left, and working with a board of directors, none of them really knew how to be as a board. It was almost like an afternoon tea party whenever they got together. So it was then taking that very seriously when I took on that role, and that was a life changer from my perspective, because you had to learn how to go and talk to politicians, how to go to Canberra, how to then do media, how to get microphones shoved in your face when something is happening, when a major event has occurred in natural medicine and we're being attacked. Have to pick up the media, be on TV. And it was just like a 4 to 5 year, very hard, 100-hour week every year, every year for that 4 years. So I then had a 2-year break, then went back and took on another 4 or 5 year role before I then stood down. So the life changing for that is that, and I love your interpretations of entrepreneurship and the way that you help and guide people into being the best that they can and going out there and you supporting and guiding them. In those days, we never had any of that.
Yeah.
We had to just learn from the skin of our teeth and any documents that we could find. And most of the consultants were out there to charge huge amounts of money and give nothing. So in the end, I stopped having consultants to help me. So I'd go and do all my own research and then go off and do whatever I had to do, and which culminated in being the first naturopath ever to present at the National Press Club. And that was just like the greatest blur of my life. But it was great because natural medicine from that day on was seen to be viable and valuable, not again because of me, but because we were able to get into the press club and we were able to have the Pharmaceutical Guild and the Pharmaceutical Society being there, asking questions, challenging me, forcing questions, and then coming out the other end okay. And it's only because of the School of Hard Knocks that I'd been through before that I was able to represent natural medicine well. And then the media started to come to us and ask us what we thought about different things. And that was a big game changer for the occupation as well. So, and credibility factor. At that stage, we had pharmacies who started stocking natural medicine products.
Yeah.
And now here's pharmacy, number one, the most respected organisation and professionals in the country. They started stocking our product, and stocking our product, we got the credibility as an offshoot. And so, yes, and everything there in that fifth pathway is all the things that my life changer at the moment is now mentoring and doing podcasts.
Yeah.
And excuse me, and wanting to pass on all the information that I've gathered over the years to the next group coming through, for them to be able to use it in whatever way they want, so they don't have to go through what I went through virtually.
Sitting in libraries and looking at books. There was so much really pivotal information that was just put out there. And because it's your life, right, it's just so easy to skim over some of it. So I just want to sort of just hammer a few of the points there, because it was like this amazing story that I didn't want to interrupt. The first part was that you spoke about leadership. And you said no one wanted the job. No one had any idea what we were doing. And I think it's so important and vital that we just recognize that's almost exactly how everyone feels all the time in any type of leadership role. And the thing is, it always figures itself out. Everything is figure-outable at that point. You are going to figure out how to do it because you're going to have to learn. And majority of the time, everyone kind of feels like a bit of a phony, regardless of how much information content, there are times that we will be like, I'm not worthy to even do this and to do that. And the thing that I loved about it, the other thing I wrote down while you were talking, is about following the journey and following the path. And, it was very clear that you were like, even in the relationship thing, it was like you couldn't rush that. Things that you want to last forever, cannot be rushed. So it's like when people try to date immediately, I'm like, get to know the person, like get to like each other as humans to make sure you're making the right thing, or you can end up in like catastrophe and catastrophic circumstances later. But it's following that journey, and it's like, you know, following that interest as well. That really simple thing of, I love books, this is really interesting, my friend is sick, I have a solution, this is really interesting. And what came out of that was, the next thing I have to do is this. It wasn't this dream of, I'm going to open a natural medicine school, to here it was like, this is just the next logical step. And that has made all the difference for you. It's not, I want to be world renowned to doing that. You know, you've played down a lot of the influence that you've had in this area. Do your own research. We, both of us, you know, the modesty person and the person wanting to promote their aunt, you know, there's a little bit of a probably difference there, but, you know, and you took on these roles even when you didn't want to do them, but you followed that journey. And I think it's really important to discuss that. And the work that you did in that area, because you didn't skip the steps. This is the other really important thing I wanted to mention, is that you gave that credibility because you started doing the research, you did the degrees, you did the stuff, you learned, you taught, you then went to the next step and the next step. And that's how you end up speaking at the press club. You don't get to skip to the end. It's not how it works. And I think a lot of people in this day and age try and just go, I want to open a school and it's going to do this and it's going to be $40 million and blah, 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 blah. No, not how it works, guys. You don't get to skip to the end. You got to do the work.
Yeah, it's all about, we were always focused on quality. It was never about numbers in the college. It was all about the quality of their education, to make sure that we were turning out really top quality practitioners. And if that meant spending extra time with them, then that's what we would do, and then do ongoing support. You say, you're right, you know, you don't skim over something that you have a value placed. It lacks integrity to jump over and just say, oh, I'll do the best I can. I don't think that if you're going to take on, well, like when I took the role on as the president of ATMS, I knew, Ronnie and myself, we actually spoke about it for over a month before me agreeing. And the reason for that was, I knew what it was going to be like, and that I would be working long hours and it was going to be arduous. And there were several people on the board who never wanted me to be in that position. They wanted somebody else who would just go along with the flow, and same old was okay. And they knew that one of the biggest things that I wanted to do was change the standard of education. Because I knew the education I had, and I knew what its limitations were, and I knew that we could do better. Although I knew nothing about education at that moment. I hadn't gone to learn how to be a teacher. So I went and did my degree. I did that. And then, of course, I did my master's and my doctorate, because I didn't know when to stop. But again, constantly wanting to do better for natural medicine. The master's was about looking at reflexology and what the flaws are in that. And then my doctorate was looking at what is the future of natural medicine, drawing on past people who've influenced our journey. So it's always about quality and longevity of who we are and what we do. So future generations will be in practice and still be helping and supporting and guiding the consumers in their community for their health and wellbeing recovery. And that is, again, that fifth one is then agreeing to be mentor, because I always thought being a mentor is like a bit egocentric, you know. You sort of bit up yourself when someone, they asked me, would I mentor them? And I said, no, mate. I said, I think what you're asking me is you just need a bit of a hand. They said, no, I really want structured mentoring. I said, oh, no, look, I'm not into that crap, mate. No, I'm not into that. I said, I'll help you. No, you need to go away and I want you to find out what about mentors, and I want you to be my mentor. So I did look it up, and I know what mentoring was from uni. And I thought, when we did have mentors in our masters, I thought they didn't do a very good job and they weren't that supportive in one way. So I thought, oh, well, I'll just write my own what a mentor should be, what I would have liked to have had. And that's what I did. I wrote a little workbook, and then I said to her, okay, I'll be your mentor, and sent her the workbook, and I'm still mentoring her. It's only do 20 at a time now. So I mentor 20 people, but I still feel a bit, well, that sounds a bit ego stuff. I still don't like it. I think we need to have another name for it. And then the podcast, they started because I wanted to share folk medicine revival with the world virtually. I want everyone to know that they can go into their kitchen, they can go into their kitchen cupboard, they can go into the pantry, they can go to a fruit and vegetable shop and find a solution that is going to help them. And always remembering that natural medicine creates options for people. It's not alternative, it's not complementary, we create options. So there could be surgery. This is what the doctors say, you've got to have surgery. Okay, the options for supporting that person would be diet, looking at stress, looking at recovery, all of those sort of things. So the podcasts are there designed to cover as many subjects as possible, and for people to get into free access and have the information to share.
And I loved, it was one of the discussion points that we had last time I physically saw you, was around, this is why I'm doing the podcast. It's about leaving that legacy of like, this is what I know. And people that know me know that I'm obsessed with this idea of legacy, of what are you leaving behind on this planet? We are a blip in a tiny radar of this story of the earth, and of, one day we will die. You're going to die. This is how it goes. What are you leaving for people in the future when that occurs? And I loved that concept of, that's why you're doing the podcast. It wasn't about, I'm going to make $1 million doing this. It's about following that journey. Byproduct will be sponsorship and that sort of stuff will turn up, but following the journey of what you've done and staying true to that is also, I think, really part of the thing for you. And surely one of the reasons you've been so successful in what you've done, because it was just, so intuitively you, everything that you've done, everything that you've touched, and you and Ronnie have touched, have really been very true to who you are as people.
Well, talking about the, we know, living is a sexually transmitted terminal condition. The fact that we're here means we're all going to die. And that was what was in my mind when I wrote my 3, well, I've written about 5 books, but 3 in particular, was to get, when I was doing talkback for the ABC, we wrote down all the solutions that were sort of folk medicine solutions, then we put it into a book. But then so many people would be fruit and vegetables as medicine. They didn't get the concept. So then I wrote the book. I thought, if I write a book, then it's always going to be there. And if I self-publish, then I've got control over it. And then in that way, it's there. And for people to have, of course, the start is about 120 pages and the latest publication is about 420 pages now. But it's so lovely when, not last week, the week before, I got a letter from a 14-year-old girl who said to me that she takes her fruit and vegetables as medicine book with her to school so she can share it with her friends, and that she wanted to report that the honey recipe actually worked for a sore throat. Now, when that sort of thing happens, it's like, this is fantastic. It's not selling millions of books. It's the people who read them, that they get value out of them and they appreciate the information. And so that will be my legacy, I hope. And, for people who are following through in the next generations, can do the same. We need to be leaving our mark there as traditional holistic practitioners, working within the holistic paradigm and being there to support our clients. And it is really a true community service what we do. It's a tragedy that the government don't see or place any value on what we do. We aren't in the allied health system. We don't kill enough people to be in the allied healthcare system. You've got to be regulated to be there. In order to get regulated, you've got to be unsafe. We are too safe, gentle, safe practitioners. The government doesn't recognise us and they give us no credibility. But you know what? We don't need it. We don't need it because the moment the government gets a hold of you, they want to control you. I think it's wonderful what we can do if we can continue to do safely and effectively and efficiently for what we do each and every day. Then the consumer, the pendulum swinging back. As we can see, the pendulum is coming back, whereas people are saying, what food can I have if I've got a cold? Does chicken soup really work for a virus? So we're getting lots and lots and lots of that. I did an interview for Adelaide Radio just a few days ago. 4 people with talkback wanted to know, is ginger worthwhile having? And apples. I've read in your book they're antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. Should I have that? Now,
and
these
the answer
were young
is
women. Yes. And they were young people. They were in their 30s who were asking that question. So the pendulum's swinging, and I think there will always be a role for natural medicine practitioners so long as we take our rightful place and don't try to look like doctors. We aren't pseudo doctors. We are who we are as individual standalone practitioners. I think our consumer supports us.
Yeah, and really important, you know, to note the difference of that. On more than one occasion, I have had some concoction that you have given me. And I'm going to be honest, sometimes it tastes like absolute shit. I'll be the first one to say that. And I think I've said that to your face more than once. Yes. But every time it has absolutely supported in fixing whatever, you know, my immune system last year when I got pneumonia. You know, my dad threw your book at me and went, have a read. And I was like, okay, how do I build my immune system? And guess what the answer was? Fruit and vegetables. Okay. Yeah. So guess what I did? And all I've had for breakfast for the last 2 months now are fruit and vegetables to rebuild my immune system. And given that we're in, you know, flu season is about to hit us, we're in the middle of COVID-19 going on as well. This is, you know, the perfect time to be looking at that. So obviously, thank you for everyone who's stayed on for this. This is just such an interesting interview. Where can people find you now?
Well, I've got an email or the website. So it's simply just Sandi Rogers, SandiRogers. So that's just www.sandyrogers.com.au. Or the podcast, The Natural Way with Sandi podcasts. They're the best ways. Or I can give an email if you would like.
Oh, go on. Let's hear it.
So an email would be Sandi, Sandi @sandyrogers.com.au, and it's ROGERS.
You might have to spend a bit of time waiting though if you're going to get on that shortly, because I know you just got something like 1,800 emails.
Yes, and I'm hoping that that's now going to be sorting itself out, because a lot of the answers we were able to get back, it's about certain things. So I'm actually doing 4 more podcasts, and I've referred them now to the podcasts that are going to be specific about some of the questions. So a lot of it's about mucus, a lot of it's about, you know, the flu. I mean, let's just be, if I can just say one thing, this is one of the most interesting years for the immune system, because everyone is so clean and healthy. Hands are nice and clean, shopping trolleys are clean, we're not coughing into people's faces. Is this not a good year for us, for the immune system? Absolutely. So I'm really quite excited. We were going to have a very bad flu season this year. I don't think it's going to be bad at all. So we'll see what happens.
Fingers crossed.
Look,
if we could just have some relief, it would be ideal. Let us out of the house at some point as well. Thank you so much. I think every person who's been watching this video or listening to this podcast will be frantically writing things down. Thank you so much for being a guest. I've loved interviewing you. I was like, I've never interviewed a family member before.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's wonderful spending time with you.
Great, guys. You'll see. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will send you guys through the show notes. You can check that over, and everything that Sandi's spoken about will be in the show notes as well. The other thing is I will have her email, her website, and her podcast all hyperlinked, so you can click on it right now and go and find out more about that. And some of that, look, guys, some awful contraptions in there, but I can guarantee you, whatever you're trying to fix, she absolutely knows a way how to do that. Thank you so much. Don't forget to click the subscribe button below. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.